is 90.3.
This is Real FM.
E buonasera Dublino, welcome back to the second episode of Do You Speak Tech? You are listening to Near FM 90.3 megahertz if you are based in Dublin. Otherwise, don't miss a bite and listen to me visiting our website nearfm.ie. My name is Patrick Domanico, but you can easily find me online as Cocopraise. And today, like a taxi driver, I will drive you to space and back. We're gonna do this one thanks to a keen guy based in Milan, Paolo Amoroso. And just for today, because we are both Italian, you can, if you want, we can say every 2 minutes, Mamma mia, Mario, pasta, pizza. It's completely up to you. Just let me know your preference through our text line 08769445500. This is Do You Speak Tech? And the topic of the day is space. Why? Because a man always dreams to fly, and we went already above and beyond. As a matter of fact, we have been venturing into space since October 4th, 1957, exactly when the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth. This happened during the period of political hostility between the Soviet Union and the United States. It's time of the first and only interview of the day, so we're gonna talk with Paolo Amoroso. Paolo is a keen guy that lives in Milan, in Italy, where he works in astronomy and space outreach and education, which are his lifelong passions. He's also interested in computers, Google technologies, and Python programming, so he should be already here. Pronto, Paolo?
Hello.
Hello, Paolo. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And hello to all of you who are tuning in and listening.
And listening to us on Near FM. Just let's remind the name of the radio station that is guesting Do You Speak Tech, the radio show that introduces all the technologies we use daily. And I think today you are gonna shock us like our former Prime Minister. But let's start from the beginning, Paolo. I assume before going to space, we've studied it. What was the role played by astronomy in the years before the first space mission, and what is its role now?
Astronomy can tell you what kind of celestial bodies and stuff is in outer space. It can also tell you what is the nature of these bodies and matter. And most importantly, how to get there. You need to know what bodies are out there, because with the naked eye, we can see only a small fraction of what's in the universe. And most importantly, you need to know the nature of these bodies. For example, if you want to land on a planet, you need to know how the atmosphere of this planet interacts with your spacecraft. How thick, what is the nature of the surface you want to land to, so that you can design your spacecraft. And you also need to know the position and the motion in space of the planets or bodies you want to explore. So this was the role of astronomy up to the space age. And this is largely also the role of astronomy now.
Well, I assume it's still playing an important role in spite of any technology and progress. And Paolo, I'm super curious to know when, in your opinion, of course, when man started thinking that it was possible to go to space.
Well, since essentially forever. The first literary work discussing about the possibility of traveling to other celestial bodies dates back to the 2nd century before Christ, and is considered possibly the first example of a science fiction literary work. But it took humanity until the late 19th century and the early 20th century to lay out the foundation, the theoretical foundation of rocket propulsion and space flight. For example, in Europe and the United States. Scientists like Konstantin Tsiolkovsky in Russia, Hermann Obert in Germany, and Robert Goddard in the United States were among the first and most important to prove that space flight was indeed possible.
I think Russia played an important role. Well, indirectly, because the question I have now, it's so the role of a Cold War during the space race.
The space race was the Cold War was the key motivation behind the space race. Actually, space was one of the fronts on which the Cold War was fought. We may look at this thing like this, and the major opponents, the superpowers of at the time, the United States and the Soviet Union, wanted to go to space for two main reasons. The first was to develop the technologies to fly weapons such as nuclear warheads on the opponent's country. But there were also ideological, political, public relation reasons, such as proving with the use of advanced technologies such as space exploration that your model of society was better, your society, your political and society structure was better, and it could sustain travel to outer space.
Well, it's interesting, and let me recap in a while, if I can say. So, thanks to the Cold War, Russia and the trouble they had that time, so we finally went on the moon. But what are, in your opinion, the first 2-3 steps? So, Sputnik, I said during the beginning of your interview, was the first
artificial satellite.
The first and then, so what's happened? So when we went finally on the moon, so from Sputnik and the first step on the moon, so what's happened in that particular time?
There were a number of major milestones before finally reaching the moon. You mentioned the very first, sending a satellite in orbit around our planet, Sputnik, but we first had to make something built by humans reach a celestial body such as the moon. The Soviets were also the first to send uncrewed vehicles to the moon in 1959, and they were also the first to send a living being in orbit around the Earth. The dog Laika also in 1957. And finally, they were the first to send a man, a human being, in orbit around the Earth, Yuri Gagarin, in 1961. These were the major milestones.
I'm very interested about this part of the interview because I think we use daily a lot of technologies developed during any kind of space missions. And I know because we already talked about this one when I called you for this interview, and I think there are a lot.
Let's start from the very symbol of the influence of technology on everyday life. That is the smartphone we all have in our pocket. The smartphone has at least a couple of technology derived or originally developed for space. First off, satellite navigation, GPS, the global positioning system, the navigation system. There is no satellite navigation without navigation satellites, without satellites. Satellites, that is, vehicles that can go to outer space and orbit around the Earth, are essential for creating the global network of electromagnetic signals that our smartphones receive and can use to track their location. But this is not the only technology, space-derived technology we have on smartphones. The other is the cameras we take our countless pictures and selfies with. The cameras have a CMOS technology sensor that was originally developed by NASA, in particular by Jet Propulsion Laboratory scientist Eric Fossum, who worked in the early 1990s to improve the electronic image sensor that space vehicles used at the time. They used sensors that were relatively large and needed a lot of power. There already was a good promising technology that is CMOS technology, but it had a major disadvantage. It had lots of electronic noise when taking pictures with such sensors. So these NASA scientists significantly improved the CMOS sensors to reduce noise, to miniaturize the devices, and make it usable in lots of everyday technologies, such as the smartphone, where they also ended up. But there are many other space spin-offs, that is, technologies developed from space technologies or with the help of space agencies such as NASA.
Wow.
For example, the cordless portable vacuum cleaner, for example, the ones Black & Decker originally developed.
No way.
This is originated in the mid-1960s when NASA needed similar technology for lunar exploration.
Interesting, Paolo.
Another space spin-off we have noticed countless times in this pandemic time without realizing it came from space technology. That is the infrared ear thermometer, which is a gun-like device which has the shape of a gun that can give an instant reading on the temperature of the human body without contact, without touching. And it was developed with space technology. And remaining in the field of healthcare, there's another spin-off, such as the space blanket, a kind of very lightweight, thin sheeting that can thermally isolate, in the case of the space blanket, an incapacitated subject, for example. And this blanket is found typically in the first aid kits, for example, on ambulances used by paramedics. And it was originally developed in around the mid-1960s by NASA for protecting space vehicles from the extreme temperature changes of outer space.
Well, maybe I understood what are you talking about, and maybe I've seen them in many, many movies, especially from US. Correct, Paolo?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. So, Paolo, I just wondering a couple of things. Let's stay on US, for example. In the last few years, we have seen new companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origin. What's the role played by companies such as SpaceX? That we remember, this is the company funded by Elon Musk. Or Jeff Bezos' space company Blue Origin or Virgin Galactica. So what's exactly the role they are playing at the moment?
We can better understand the role of this private space company by comparing it with that of space agencies. They have complementary roles. On the one hand, space agencies have the main mission of pushing the boundaries of space exploration, of space technologies, of doing activities and missions that may not have economic motivations and rewards, such as pure science exploration of the planets and other bodies and the universe for its own sake. On the other hand, private companies have the role of using these technologies to, for example, sell services to space agencies or to make a profit and in turn develop more technologies, reduce costs, reduce risks, and especially reduce operational costs for space agencies.
And I think this is the reason why national agencies such as NASA is not using anymore its own space shuttle.
Yes, this is related. Up to a decade or two ago, developing everything for a space agency was essentially the only option. But space agencies are not in the business of developing and operating spacecraft any more than astronomers are in the business of developing telescopes. Spacecrafts and telescopes are means to an end. Space agencies need spacecraft to explore space. And so these days, space agencies, especially NASA, have delegated to the private space sector most of the development and operation of spacecrafts from which they can buy services and flights. This can reduce costs because this way a space agency is not the only client of a space company. And by having more clients, they can reduce costs, for example.
Got it. But I think in this case, Paolo, I don't know, just let me know, in your opinion, does there exist the risk that flights from to space will become a kind of monopoly managed only by a few companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origin? Because if nobody invests anymore...
This is an impression.
Go ahead, sorry.
This is an impression you may get by observing the space industry from the outside. But I think this risk is not too high because there are lots of private space companies and especially startups that are crowding the markets. For example, let's consider the business of sending payloads into low Earth orbit. There are currently a couple hundred between major space companies such as SpaceX and lesser-known small startups that want to send their rockets, their satellites in low Earth orbit. So there are really many players. Of course, many of them will fail like most startups do, but I think there's a critical mass to get a critical mass to get a healthy market, and this is also what clients want. For example, satellite operators want redundancy. They don't want to depend on a single launch partner to send their stuff to space. Okay,
and well, it makes sense. But I have another question. Sorry, without S. If national agencies such NASA or ESA, should be the correct pronunciation, the European Space Agency, so if they use private companies for a lift, let's say, to space, so what about all the innovation and patents derived from space missions?
Again, we can think about the role of space agencies, which is to push the boundaries of technologies and to demonstrate, to prove, to explore what is possible in space exploration. Their primary role is to acquire the knowledge and to disseminate this knowledge also for the benefit of their own country economy. For example, both NASA, the European Space Agency, and all the major space agencies have technology transfer offices and structure to disseminate, to transfer the knowledge they acquire with space exploration to the private industry, to the rest of society. They develop the technologies, the science, the technology, and the knowledge, and they transfer it. Okay,
yeah, correct. Well, correct. It makes sense. I'm just realizing, maybe this is another interesting point of view. So, Paolo, unfortunately, we are at the end of this fantastica, let's say in Italian, interview, chat. And I've just a couple of questions. I hope you can tell us something more. So, for example, what are the space missions planned in the future, and what we can expect in the future?
In the middle to long term, the stars are aligning in a way, as there is a solid plan to return humans to the moon. It's an international collaboration between NASA and other space agencies, and it's the Artemis program.
Okay, so we're going back to on the moon. So very good. Paolo, well, I introduce yourself to like a keen guy, so a person with interest, and you works in astronomy and space outreach. And it's true, as a matter of fact, you run one of the most followed podcasts that talks about space. And I know it has been followed by thousands of users during a specific space mission. Which one, Paolo?
Yes, I'm one of the co-hosts of the first Italian space podcast, Astronauticas, and we did a live streaming of the launch of the first Italian female astronaut, Samantha Cristoforetti. And we have a peak of over 60,000 simultaneous views in this live streaming. And
I assume for a kind of niche like people interested in space, I think it's a huge number, Paolo, no?
Yes. Well, there was a lot of interest for Samantha's flight.
Yeah, Samantha, you're talking here like a friend, and I think it's true, because you and Samantha sound a bit kind of fair. You did something for Samantha Cristoforetti.
Yes, we are actually friends.
Okay.
And I wrote the glossary of her book, her autobiography, and he asked me to compile, to put together a list of space terms, space exploration jargon at the end of the book and into a glossary, which I wrote.
Okay, for those who don't know who Samantha Cristoforetti is, Paolo, tell us in 10 seconds who she is.
She is an Italian Air Force pilot and astronaut with the European Space Agency.
Fantastico, Paolo. For those who want to learn Italian, listening to your podcast, how you can reach your podcast, and how we can reach yourself, of course?
Our website is astronauticas.it. And of course, we are on all the major podcast aggregators. Okay, and
what are your socials and your website, Paolo?
My personal website is paoloamoroso.com, and I'm on Twitter as Amoroso.
Amoroso, simply Amoroso. Paolo, I'm speechless because your chat has been very, very interesting. At least this is my opinion, and I would like to say thank you once again for accepting this invitation. And hopefully we are going to talk once again about space and new missions. Thank you very much, Paolo.
You are welcome. Thanks to you and to all of you who listen to this program.
Alla grande, alla grande. Thank you very much, Paolo. Grazie mille. Love you. Don't forget me. E ciao.
Across Northeast Dublin.
90.3.
This is Near FM.
Do you speak